Ryan's house. Hey, how you doing? I'm still at Ryan's house, and he was doing a little bit of stuff today. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm gonna jump on for a second and just give y'all a little story. Now, and it has everything to do with Gypsy Rose Blanchard's camp. I can't come on later tonight, but anyway, so we'll just do this right now. But glad to see you. I didn't announce it at all. I just jumped on as usual. I'm not good about announcing that, but so now, we've kind of talked about this person once before, and I had said at some point, I'm going to go ahead and bring this out because I think it's important. Because we do know that birds of a feather always flock together. I mean, you're not going to see a buzzard flying with a bunch of little sparrows. It's not going to happen, right? They're all the same. So, what we're going to talk about is the little lady named Sheena Eastburn. They call her Big Sheena. That's what they call her. All right. So, there's a little website that's called Murderpedia. I know, right? Of all things, Murderpedia. So, if you go out onto this website, you can find information about everybody who has this type of a crime. So, I had went out and found it, and I'm going to see if I can share the screen with you or not. Let me see if it'll let me share the screen. Hang on. It may or may not. We may be able to read from that. It might. Here we go. But I don't like it won't. Here we go. I think I can play this. Hang on a second, guys. Let's see. Wait a minute. Let me see what this one is. Okay, I found where this. Let me play this right quick. I'm not sure if it's the same case, but here we go. Here we go. Okay, y'all ready?
Here. Remains unsolved.
Well, this is just something else too. I'm not sure if it's the same or not.
On November 2nd, 1998, John McKinnon, a 67-year-old taxi driver from Douglas, Georgia, left his home to pick up a passenger.
Okay.
It would be the last time he was seen
alive. This is just a cold case that's in the
Hours after McKinnon departed, his body was discovered in a rural area about 9 miles west of Douglas.
There are so many cold cases, it's sad.
The 67-year-old had been shot dead, his wallet, keys, and taxi stolen. The circumstances pointed to a robbery gone tragically wrong. For more than 2 decades, this brutal crime has haunted the Coffee County community. Each year, as the anniversary of McKinnon's death passes, renewed calls for justice echo through the area. Despite extensive investigations by local law enforcement and ongoing support from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the case has hit a dead end. Detectives have been unable to identify any suspects.
Yeah. All right.
And the lack...
Whoop. What is it doing? Okay. I guess it doesn't want to share that anymore. All right, then. Well, we'll just go back over here. Sorry about that. Let me re-pick this up. So we're going to go back to where we started. Okay, right here. And we're going to go back over here to the E's. All right. Here we go. All right. Hang on. We'll get it up there. No, that's not what I want. I want the one directly from here. All right. Okay. I think I have to do by the victim's name. I'm not sure. Oh, here we go. This is how you get to it. So just bear with me for a second. I'm going to get this on here. That's F's. I'm looking for E's. Here we go. Ding, ding, ding. All right. Well, I might have to put his name in here. Let me see. Search it this way. Now, here we go. Now, I'm going to share this screen. Now, this is going to be a little different because this is actually going to be an appellate. Let me stop that one and share the other one. I know, y'all, just hang on a second. Not that one. Hey there, Barbara. How you doing? Good to see you. I'm going to show y'all something. If I can get it to pop on up. Share my screen. There we go. Now, this is Big Sheena Eastburn, which is part of Gypsy Rose Blanchard's crew. And again, we said birds of a feather flock together. Now, this case involves, I'm going to have to pull this up this way, it's a 42-page document. I have to kind of read it a little bit. I'm going to try to pull it up on my I'm gonna pull it up on my iPad and see if we can just read it from there. Hang on a second, because it's kind of interesting. I love reading appeals because they're very interesting. They have things you learn things that you didn't know before. Is this charged up? Yes. Okay. So here we go. Let me pull it up over here. I hope everybody had a good evening. We had a nice evening. We went out to dinner. It was fun. It was fun. We went to this little place, played a few games. We went to a place called, oh Lord, I knew the name of it. Now I can't think of it. It's like First Base. It's like this baseball type restaurant. Anyway, it's called Murderpedia. Hang on a second now. I'm never ready. You know that. Here we go. All right, I'm on it. Here we go. So let's pull it back up. And it's E's. Here we go. Tim Eastburn. All right. So the person we're talking about is Tim Eastburn. And the other person involved is Big Sheena Eastburn. All right. So Sheena Eastburn, which is part of Gypsy's camp. I'm going to read y'all a little bit about this. Missouri Supreme Court denies appeal in Sheena Eastburn's case. This was June 25th of 2013. Hey, Leslie, how you doing, girl? Good to see you. We're just talking about a little bit of a thing over here on GypsyRoseBlanchard's camp that people have talked about for just about a half a second, but they don't really tell the whole story, right? Okay, so we're going to go back to the original scene. This is the scene. Life without parole, the scene. Deep in the wooded hills of McDonald County, Missouri, beyond the overgrowth and the unattended vegetation, a stone home shows the decay from years of disuse. A retired Missouri Highway Patrol homicide investigator climbs the stairs to the front porch. Then, for the first time in more than 20 years, Miles Parks steps inside. The living room and adjacent kitchen have changed a little bit since Parks was last there. Musty cardboard boxes and debris fill the spaces that once held furniture. Only dim light filters through the translucent plastic sheeting. I guess they had sheeting of plastics on the window. And this, I'm telling the story, is what I'm doing. I'm telling y'all the story. So hang on a second, right? So then it goes. The windows were covered, but Parks can still envision the scene as it appeared in 1992. The windows were just gunshot shattered. The panes were just shattered from gunshot. The hole where a bullet lodged into a wall. On the floor between the two is the spot where a man died at the age of only 22 years old. This man was 22 years old. The victim had been shot through the window, and Parks believes a teenager who was inside the home planned the whole thing. Parks sums it up simply as this was a brutal, cold-blooded, premeditated murder. Okay, so here we go again. Now, as I said, birds of a feather flock together. We have a premeditated murder by Gypsy Rose, and we have a premeditated murder by this person they named Big Sheena. All right. So this is the actual murder. The evidence had pointed to three teenage suspects: 18-year-old Matt Myers, 19-year-old Terry Banks, and Banks' lover, Sheena Eastburn, the teenage ex-wife of the victim. Sheena had been just 15 years old when she married Tim Eastburn and was 16 when they divorced. Okay, now that's a quickie marriage, and I don't understand teenagers getting married and divorced. What happened here? That's the story we're probably not going to know, and that's okay too, because it has nothing to do with the choice that she made to premeditate something, right? So here we go. I'll go back up here. So, wow. Sheena was barely 17 on this November night in 1982 when her ex-husband was shot to death. Sheena claimed otherwise. More than 20 years later, Sheena Eastburn lives at the Missouri Correctional Facility in Chillicothe and still maintains she was never a killer. Gypsy Rose Blanchard's not a murderer either. Just ask her, okay? All right, here we go. Sheena says she agreed to participate in a robbery, but never a murder. I was supposed to go down there and get him out of the house, and then they were going to go rob him for drugs and money. Boy, that sounds like a familiar story, doesn't it? Then she goes, Sheena says Banks fired a shot in a moment of jealousy. The bullet pierced him's upper body. We both dropped, and when we dropped, I crawled around to where he was. Sheena pauses before continuing. All right, to state she stated that she was going to steal from the home. Tim kissed her. Well, how does Tim kiss her when he's like on the ground after being shot? All right. We both dropped, so we just said that, but jurors didn't buy that. Sheena was convicted of first-degree murder, a crime that carries only two possible penalties in Missouri. Since the prosecution didn't seek the death penalty, the only other sentencing option was life without parole. But somehow she's out on the streets walking around, right? So apparently that did not stick, did it? Now, I think it's going to have something, I'm not sure, but I think it's going to have something to do with age, but we'll see because I'm reading this story cold to you. I've not read it before. So, I still thought that I might get out of prison someday, Sheena says. I didn't realize that life without parole actually meant life without parole. Well, apparently it did not mean life without parole because you're out. Okay, here's the argument. At a law office in Kansas City, Sheena Eastburn's attorney, Kent Gibson, prepares arguments to present before the Missouri Supreme Court. Gibson has been doing this type of work, for 30 years. So she's got this lawyer, with 30 years experience. I think if you look across the spectrum of persons convicted of first-degree murder, I'd say her level of culpability is among the lowest I've ever seen. Whoa, whoa, whoa. If you planned a robbery and you were supposed to get him out of the house, you're part of it. You're part of it. Premeditated, okay? Wow. Gypsy believes his client now has a real shot at freedom. In an Alabama case last year, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a sentence of life without parole is unconstitutionally cruel for crimes committed before the age of 18. So her age is what gets her out of jail. All right. Gibson believes the courts will decide that ruling must be applied retroactively for people like Sheena who were serving time for murders committed as juveniles. Okay. The difference between her and Gypsy is Gypsy was almost 24 years old, claiming to be 19. That is the difference here. All right. So, since Missouri's first-degree murder statute doesn't allow a penalty of less than life without parole, Gibson will argue that Eastburn should be resentenced on the next lowest crime, second-degree murder. That would mean her possible sentence could range from a minimum of 10 years to a maximum of life in prison. But under the new guidelines, she would have a chance at parole. All right. Sheena could get a revised sentence that makes her eligible for parole immediately or only after serving several more years. In either case, Sheena might still have to convince a parole board to grant her freedom. Miles Parks, the retired investigator, believes Sheena should remain in prison the rest of her life, just like we believe that GypsyRoseBlanchard should be in prison for the rest of her life, just like Nick Godejohn. All right. Sheena Eastburn was old enough to get a driver's license, old enough to get married, old enough to know the difference between right and wrong, Parks says. What do you think is the appropriate punishment? What do y'all think was the appropriate punishment? I don't know. So this is the next part of this. It says longing. 20 years of incarceration have taught Sheena Eastburn to temper her hope with caution. You never count on anything completely until it happens because you cannot let yourself get your hopes too high and then be devastated at that time. This is her speaking. It's just a hard way to live. Sheena gazes out the window of the prison visiting room to view that barely changes. The buildings of the prison complex, a fence, and a line of trees along a horizon. Nothing to see here, right? The wider world has changed considerably over the past 20 years. Since inmates aren't given access to the most electronic devices, Sheena has never held a cell phone or surfed the internet. She only recently made the transition from cassette audio tapes to CDs. iPods are out of the question. Okay, all right. Sheena says the most misses are simply pleasures. Going down to the refrigerator in the middle of the night and being able to get whatever you want. Walking barefoot on the grass somewhere that it doesn't say, out out of the bounds, because at the prison that she was at, there's grass, but apparently it must have some kind of minimal security area, because if you could walk around it just at out of bounds, you can't step out of bounds. Was there not a fence there? That's the thing I don't know about that. Part two, the families. Yeah. At the prison in Chillicothe, Missouri, Sheena Eastburn recalls the day she heard the verdict. I bet that shocked her. I really believed I was going to get second-degree murder, and I was accountable for that, she says. I was okay with that. You know, Gypsy Rose was thinking she was never going to prison. She thought she was going to walk away free, and that poor old Nick would get all of the blame. Mm-hmm. Oh boy. I really believe, she goes, she really believes she's going to get second degree. Sheena was stunned when the jurors found her guilty of more serious charge, murder in the first degree. All I could hear was my mother in the courtroom. She says she was wailing. Now we're going to talk about Sheena's mother. Nearly 300 miles to the south of at home in Stella, Missouri, Sheena's mother recalls the same moment. I could control it, says Alicia Belevins. When that's your child and your only child and your hands are tied. So I'm sure she did wail. I would have wailed too. Think about it. Now I'm not excusing anybody for what they did, but put yourself in the place being that mother. Okay. Oh boy. Well, Levins knew immediately that her daughter would be sentenced to life in prison without parole. Now, 20 years after that crime and 17 years after the verdict, Levins still can't accept that the sentence is final. But it wasn't final because she's out. The bedroom is a pale yellow. It's just painted to represent the welcome of yellow ribbons. The photos on display include one that shows Sheena wearing a graduation gown in prison. It takes the day that Sheena received her high school diploma as an inmate. Well, I'm glad she did. You know, they should finish their education there. They have every opportunity to get all kinds of education. And if I was there, I would get education too. Then it says Sheena today. In the prison visiting room, Sheena points to a photo pinned to a bulletin board. It shows Dottie, the large mixed breed dog that shares a cell with Sheena and her 3 roommates. That's nice. They get to have a dog. That's really sweet, right? She obviously is not the same person she was when she was 17 years old, says Sheena. And her attorney is saying this. I don't think any of us are, he says. Well, Gypsy claims the same thing. Gypsy says his client has won the support of prison staff who would probably go to bat for her if the case goes before the parole board. Okay. She is probably the most ideal candidate for parole any of them have ever seen, he says. Unlike Diane Downs, who will never be paroled, Diane Downs' next opportunity for parole is when she's 81 years old. Good, she needs to stay where she's at. Okay. Maturity and education rings like that. Okay, should be taken into account, and that's all we're really asking, Gibson says. That she be given the opportunity to prove to the parole board and other people that she deserves a second chance. Okay, all right. Unlike for me, I can't appeal these decisions to do things. Tim cannot. Sheena says, then pauses before adding, his family cannot. Okay. Tim's brothers. This is Tim's brothers talking about this crime. My brother is still in the grave and will be from here on out, says Tim's brother, Leonard Eastburn. She should be locked up for the same way forever. Brothers Leonard and Tommy Eastburn still operate the family feed mill where Tim worked until the day he died. The mill isn't only a mile away or so from their home where Tim died. The home is now used only for storage and is owned by another brother, Bobby. The brothers have followed Sheena's case closely and believe that she will eventually get a parole hearing and ultimately freedom. But if given the chance, the brothers say they will tell the parole board how they feel. And you know what? Every victim should have the opportunity to talk to the parole board and give them their thoughts on the case. Okay. Then it says, they say, because she's evil, Leonard says, emphasizing the final word, evil. Why else would she want to kill someone who's never done any harm to her, Tommy adds. There are people in this world that are evil and they will hurt you, Tommy says. There's no rhyme or reason for it. They just will. Well, we know that. I mean, I still think that Nick Godejohn and Gypsy Blanchard are evil and dangerous to the public. Okay. Sheena says she knows that she could never take away their pain, but says she would like to tell Tim's family how sorry she is. I realized a lot of the things I had done destroyed a lot of lives, Sheena says. It wasn't even about my life. It was about my victim's family, my family, and the boy's family. What boy? The boy. What boy is she talking about? Hmm. But I hope that one day they find peace. I know that one day they will ever want to talk to me about it. That's okay. So I guess she's agreed to talk to them. Like her daughter, Alicia Blevins says that she often thinks of Tim's family. I'm truly sorry for their loss, Blevins says, but but we all lost that day. We all lost. Now here's the postscript. The Missouri Supreme Court oral arguments in Sheena Eastburn's case on April 30th, her attorney expects a ruling in the next 30 to 60 days. So this was a few years back. Okay, we're going a few years back here in this. Like Sheena, the gunman Terry Banks was sentenced to life in prison without parole. However, the federal and state Supreme Court rulings will not apply to Banks because he was over 18 at the time of the murder. She was only 17, right? Matt Myers, who fired the second shot, pled guilty to second-degree murder. Myers was sentenced to 67 years in prison and is currently eligible for parole. Now, here's another part of the story. McDonald County woman seeks a new trial following the 1995 murder conviction. Okay, this was printed on July 29th of 2012. Joplin, Missouri. Lisa Blevins smiles as she looks at a photograph of her young daughter making faces in the back seat of the car. In another photo, she sees Sheena, her only child, in a wedding dress with a man who would be her husband. Now remember, she gets married at 15 or 16 years, married at 15 years old. Way too young. I don't know why, I don't understand it. Okay, but people did that back then, I guess. So then she says, boy, oh boy. Her smile gives away an expression of sadness. She was only 15 then. She was just a kid, says Blevins. Sheena was wild. I will admit that. For her and Tim, life was one big party because they were teenagers. That's right. They were teenagers. I just wish I could have done more for her when I had the chance. Maybe things would have turned out differently, she says. About 2 years after the wedding photo was taken, Tim Eastburn was dead. Prosecutors claim that Sheena, who turned 17 just 50 days before Tim was killed, was the mastermind of the plot in which she enlisted the aid of 2 accomplices to shoot Tim. Then, Tim, then 22 years old, for his money and his drugs. So this had been years after they were divorced. The Eastburns had divorced 2 months before the shooting. Wait a minute. The Eastburns had divorced 2 months before the shooting, which occurred on November the 19th, 1992. At Eastburn's rural home at the Rocky Comfort, which is the name of some little town, I guess. But they were still seeing each other. So they were getting divorced, but still seeing each other. They grew up together. If you think about that, children that age, they grew up together. They probably went to high school together. They probably known each other their entire lives, in those little towns like that. Okay. The Eastburns, okay, then it goes, prosecutors told the jurors that during her trial on July the 20th, 1995, that Sheena had lured her ex-husband into the kitchen of his home. Now, I have heard little snippets about this before where she had said something about luring somebody into something, that she had actually talked to her sister about this, and her sister told her no, okay? So some of this story is out, but I just want to give you the rest of the story. Let's talk about the rest of the story. On the back porch, Terry Banks, Sheena's new boyfriend of 2 weeks, and his friend Matthew Myers waited for the opportunity to shoot Tim through a kitchen window with a rifle that the men had stolen 2 days before in a burglary from Tim's home. So they steal the rifle from Tim's home and shoot him with his own rifle. That's even worse. Lord have mercy. Horrible. Well, Sheena standing beside him, and just after he kissed her, Tim was shot in the head by Banks. Myers came inside with a rifle and shot him again to finish him off. During the trial, prosecutors introduced nearly 60 items of physical evidence, including the rifle, bullet fragments taken from Tim's body, and a dozen of photographs of the murder scene, as well as his autopsy. But it's what wasn't brought out during the trial that is now the issue. Jurors were never told about an IQ test that raised questions about Sheena's capability to organize a killing, or that one of her defense lawyers believed they just weren't prepared for the trial. Nor were they told that Sheena had allegedly been raped by a McDonald County jailer and may have been taken by county officials for an abortion, information her lawyers could have used to negotiate a lighter sentence. Okay, what does one have to do with the other? Whatever the jailer did has nothing to do with the murder that she planned or premeditated. That has nothing to do with it. And I don't think it should be part of it. Should he be in trouble? Absolutely. Should she be able to press charges? Absolutely. Because no matter what you've done, nobody has the right to take you against your will like that. Nobody. Nobody has the right to rape anybody. Okay. 2 days before the murder. Okay, so when Sheena Banks, okay, there we go. Let's get back to where we were. Despite the divorce, the Eastburns maintained an ongoing sexual relationship. Anytime Sheena needed money or drugs, she visited her ex-husband, who gave her what she wanted in exchange for sex. The Eastburns also made plans to be remarried in the week before he was killed. Now, hang on a minute. I believe that she was just leading him on, just like her best friend over there, GypsyRoseBlanchard, was leading on Nick Godejohn for the reasons to get what she wanted. What did she want? She wanted her mother out of the way. Okay. Oh boy. When Sheena met Banks 2 weeks before the murder, she began a sexual relationship with him. Banks described an extremely jealous, possessive, and violent in court papers filed seeking the appeal, and it was upset about Sheena's plans to return to her ex-husband. Okay. 2 days before the murder, Banks Myers and another man, Dennis DJ Johnson, burglarized the Eastburns' home, taking an AK-47 rifle. Sheena claims that she learned of the burglary the day of the murder when she saw Myers with the rifle. She convinced them not to sell the gun, but to return it because the serial number on it could be used to trace it back to Tim. Okay, premeditating, part of the whole thing. Okay, just like her friend. I'm surprised she didn't mail that gun somewhere, just like her friend. Golly. Oh boy. Now, let's go back up here. According to Sheena's statement to the police at the time, the three had planned to rob Tim of drugs and money and leave the rifle at the house. They were going to return the stolen rifle. Okay, sure. When they found Tim at home, Sheena attempted to get him out of the house by asking him to take her for a ride on his motorcycle, but it was late and raining outside. Okay. Gibson, in his appeal, contends that the Banks flew into a jealous rage and fired the shot when he saw Tim and Sheena kiss. I crawled to his side, she says. I'm definitely guilty of second-degree murder, Sheena says during a recent interview at the women's prison in Chillicothe, where her best friend was also incarcerated, GypsyRoseBlanchard. Okay. The intent was to take back the gun that was stolen. They could track it down. I did not know they had stolen the gun 2 days prior. I talked about it with Tim. He said, if I can get my gun back, I will leave it alone. I decided to take the gun back. They would steal the drugs and the money, but when I got him out of the house. So see, still premeditating. She was going to take the gun back for them, right? Okay. Well. It was raining. Okay, so then she goes, I did not know that they had stolen this gun 2 days prior. Then she says, I decided, okay, and they would steal the drugs and the money, and when she got him out of the house. And then she goes, all of a sudden, I heard a bang. We both hit the floor. It was so loud, she said. With tears coming to her eyes, Sheena said, I crawled to the side. He was laying there and he was bleeding. I grabbed the towel and a sock and just tried to stop the bleeding, but I couldn't. There was nothing I could do. I tried everything I could to save him. We should have never been there in the first place. That's what you should have done. I told him I loved him, and the last thing he said was, Father, forgive me for all the sins. Terry Banks grabbed me and took me out of the house. Terry fired the first shot, and then the second shot was made by Matt. about her relationship with Tim. Sheena said, there were days when he loved me more than you could ever imagine, and there were other days when we just fought. I was 15 years old when we got married, and he was like a father and a husband to me. He was a wonderful man. Okay. For somebody with a for somebody with a case like this, the prison is not really the prison. It's always going to be inside. You will always be in prison. It does not matter whether you are free or locked up. I think you will always have that inside of you. Okay. Witness testimony. Now here's the witnesses talking about it. All three of them gave a full confession to the police, outlining their roles in the killing. Myers' plea bargain and received a total sentence of 67 years on a reduced charge of second-degree murder. He's being held in the state prison in Potosi, I think, or Potosi, but he's already eligible for parole. It is sick, isn't it, Leslie? Absolutely sick. Okay, so he's already eligible for parole. He received a sentence of life without parole. Okay, well, now we're talking about the other guy. See, he got out. Banks went to trial and was convicted of first-degree murder, and he received a course of life sentence without parole and is currently in prison. Sheena also was convicted of first degree and sentenced to life without parole. In the appeal for a new trial, Gibson argues that the only evidence presented at Sheena's trial suggesting there was any premeditation plan to the murder of Tim Eastburn was from Dennis D.J. Johnson, who became a prosecution witness in exchange for an agreement that gave him probation for the charges arising from his involvement of the burglary of Tim's home. Okay, boy. Johnson's testimony that he overheard a conversation between Myers, Banks, and Sheena Eastburn on that day of the murder in which she claimed that she had been raped by her ex-husband. Here we go, using the grape to get somebody to do something, all right? She was lying, just like Gypsy Rose was lying. Okay. She says, then she goes that she wished that he was dead. And that was brought out, and okay, so then she goes, hang on a minute, guys. It's a little bit, she had been raped by her ex-husband, and that she wishes he was dead. And that was bought and paid for by the prosecution's promise of freedom, according to the documents Gibson filed, seeking a new trial. At her trial, Sheena's public defenders did not make any effort to discredit Johnson's testimony. Okay. Gibson said that the defense at the time also failed to present evidence that says indicated Sheena was under the control and domination of Banks at the time, that she did not have the mental capacity to mastermind a plot to kill her ex-husband. A pretrial mental evaluation in the possession of her public defense at the time of her trial revealed that she had emotional and mental problems and had an IQ that may have been as low as 80, which is borderline mental, and I'm not going to use the word. Now, they did not believe that Gypsy was capable of planning a premeditated murder either, but we know she was, clearly because it happened. Gibson alleges that it was Banks, in a fit of jealousy and rage, who transformed the robbery into a murder. To bolster that position, Gibson points to Banks' escape in November of 1999 from a maximum security prison in Cameron, in which he had enough domination over a female prison guard to persuade her to bring him a guard's uniform so that they could escape together. Oh boy, now there's a whole nother part to this story. How about that? When the escape occurred, Blevins said about her daughter at Chillicothe, they put her on lockdown. They put her in the hole. They were going to leave her there until he was captured. The FBI, they were all over Sheena. She was the one who told them his dad was in Texas. Banks and the guard who helped him escape were later apprehended near the home of Banks' father in Texas. The telltale clock. Sheena Eastburn would be held in jail for nearly 3 years before her trial. Don Schlesselman, sheriff of McDonald County at the time, said she proved to be an expensive prisoner. Sheena had been in Berry County as a prisoner. When we got to the new jail done here, I moved her back, said Schlesselman. She was costing me a lot of money to hold her in Berry County. She was all screwed up. She was just heavily medicated. Wow, that's not very nice. According to Sheena, okay, wait a minute. According to Sheena, uh, Zorns allegedly took her into the property room of the jail, and there he raped her 2 times in 1994. Although Schlesselman said the sex was consensual. Okay, hold on. A prisoner cannot have consensual sex with a prison guard. There's no way. It is not consensual. That is not possible. The prison guard is not allowed to touch the prisoner. No, it's not consensual. Sorry, not consensual. Okay. Boy, lots of twists and turns here. Sheena was a minor in the jail under the authority and control of Zornos. Said Sheena, I told my mother that the officer had taken me into the property closet and had sex with me. She flipped out at that point. She locked me down. They locked me down in my cell, cut off my phone. I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. They cut off my visitors. They did not want her to talk to anybody because of what happened to her. Now, I will take up for her for this. This should have never happened to her. Just like Letitia Stouch claims the same thing. That should have never happened to her. Okay. Activity at the property room was recorded on a surveillance tape. Schusterman said he checked the tape for anything suspicious involving Zornis. He said he did not see anything at first, but a second review of the tape showed something odd with a clock on the wall outside of the property room. The hands on the clock jumped forward. A clock doesn't do that, he said. He believes Zornos tampered with the tape, deleting the evidence that he had taken Sheena to the property room. See, I believe that happened too. Okay. Sheena, in her prison interview, said, they kept trying to tell me it was consensual. They said, you know, you wanted it. You know, you missed it. It was not like I, fought it because there was no way I could have stopped him. And I believe that is true. And hell no, it was never consensual. I will take up for her for that every day of the week. I have experienced sexual abuse all of my life. I've been raped before in a violent way. After you've been in that situation, you just learn it's easier to let it go and not fight it. Now, I've heard that too. You'll hear people talk about a way to turn off a rapist is to make them think you're having a good time. They don't want you to have a good time, see? That they want to hurt you. So that messes with their mind when you start telling those things. I would like to have somebody come on here and talk about that one day. Let's do a live show where somebody talks about how to handle a rapist in the middle of being raped. Okay. So I think that'd be an interesting show. I believe it is true also. Yeah, Leslie. I mean, it makes sense. I don't care who you are. Nobody has the right to do that to you. I don't care what you've done. I don't care if you have murdered somebody. It's just, that's just never right. And I hope that the guard went to prison. They better not let him go. Okay, let's keep going over here because there's a lot to read. I mean, there's a lot to this case. It's not just, well, there was a lot to Gypsy's case as well. Both of these have a lot of things going on in these cases, but it's still the same, premeditated. Okay. Blevins says that the sheriff came into the Eastburn's feed mill in Rocky Comfort. He spoke with me and Jiggs Eastburn, Kim's father. We told him that they had a problem in the jail. Jiggs told him they were using Sheena as their personal whore, trigger warning, and that he wanted it stopped. That's when Don went back to the jail. That's when he pulled out the tape. I told him I had the evidence, the panties and the towel. He told me to bring that to the jail. He said they would take it to Missouri Southern in Joplin because they had a lab there that could test for DNA, and that he would get back with me, but he never did. Of course not. He did not want to admit that it was true. Boy. We also told him the jailers were giving the girls drugs and alcohol out of the evidence room. Now, I would believe that as well. Jusselman said he presented the tape to Joseph Schobert, who was the county prosecuting attorney at the time. Jusselman said that he sent the towel and the panties to the crime lab for analysis. I told Schobert all about it and asked him if he would charge Zorns with misconduct of a jailer. Said, what? Misconduct of a jailer? He needs to be charged with rape and sexual assault. And boy, if that's not oh boy, that is completely wrong. Completely wrong. Then he says, after for misconduct of a jailer, Says Jesselman, I did my job. No, you didn't. You half-assed did your job, and you tried to protect a rapist. Because I'm sure she's not the only one, right? I'm sure she's not the only one. Schobert, now an associate court judge in Jasper County, said, here's what I remember. Jesselman had evidence of some tampering with jail clocks, and there had been an allegation of impropriety. I told Jesselman there was a sufficient evidence to terminate his Zorno's employment, but to charge him, I would need DNA from his semen and an eyewitness. I needed corroborating evidence. There is an eyewitness, the person involved, the person that he did it to. There's your witness. No matter what she did, this happened to her. She had the right for him to be arrested. Okay. Boy, these people just cover up everything, don't they? He said he was convinced with Sheena's believability as to what happened without corroborating the evidence. Well, then why didn't you charge him with rape? That's what I want to know. When asked whether charges were not filed against Zorno's because Sheena's defense attorney could have used that in a plea deal, Schobel said yes, they could have used that in a plea deal, but that had nothing to do with it. We did not have enough evidence to charge Zorno's. Oh my God, yes, you did. You had the witness, the person it happened to, you had the DNA, you had her clothes, and you had the messed up clock. What more evidence do you need? Damn it, this is terrible. You know, here's the thing about this. I had not read any of this before. We're doing this cold together, right here together. And I started out wanting to talk about this because I'm like, okay, well, we've got premeditated murder over here by, GypsyRoseBlanchard with all kinds of excuses. And then we've got this other one over here with her. Now, she should have never done what she did to Tim. But as far as this other situation goes, boy. Now, I do know that later on, she did file a lawsuit and it was settled and she was paid. I don't think the amount was disclosed and it should not have been disclosed. So, but he still should have been charged with rape, 100%. So then she goes, the next part of it says, Jesselman said the towel and the panties came back from the crime lab with no evidence that would implicate Zorno's. Oh, really? How come? Who washed them? Eastburn's mother and other observers at the time said Zorno's was removed from the jail and briefly served as a road deputy. Jesselman denied that and said, I did not promote him to road deputy. I fired his ass. Oh, good, but he still should have been charged. Jesselman said he corrected the problem in the jail by convincing the McDonald County Commission to hire another jailer for night duty. Now, there was an abortion allegation also. The alleged rape occurred in February of 1994. A short term after that, Blevins got a call from a matron in the jail who asked him to bring her a pregnancy kit. Uh-oh. Blevins was never told the results of the test. After I did that, they took her to the county doctor at the time and said Blevins, who did not feel comfortable disclosing the doctor's name or where he lived in the county. Okay, it's a small county, so everybody knows everybody. They took her to the doctor that morning. That night, I got a call that she'd been taken to the hospital in Neosho. She was hemorrhaging from her, I'm not going to say the word. They said for me to come alone to the emergency room at the hospital. They told me they were doing something to stop the bleeding, and they would not tell me anything else. Well, of course not. It's her medical records. It's not. They don't need to tell you. Now, I believe that she's talking now. I spent the night in the hospital. I stayed with her. She was out of it most of the time. She would come in and out, and I don't know if she really knew what was going on or what had happened to her. It was clear that she had become pregnant and that she had an abortion. 2 and 2 makes 4. Okay, yeah. Okay, now I'm just reading this. None of this is mine. I did not make any of this up. I'm reading it straight from Murderpedia. Okay, so here we go. This is god awful. This is absolutely awful. Jesselman said that that never happened. She had a female problem. Blevins replied she had never had those problems before. Sheena, in her prison interview, said, I was sent to a doctor's office. The next thing I know, later on, I was in a hospital having surgery. Nobody told me I was pregnant or not pregnant. And I can believe that. I believe that's exactly what happened to her. This is just awful. This is just awful. I don't remember if anything happened at that time. I was so out of it. I never speak about it. It would not be fair to say It happened. I want to be honest as possible. My mother's convinced it did. I cannot honestly say that because I don't really remember. I bet she doesn't. I bet they, drugged her up. When Eastburn was returned to the jail, Blevins said that they put her on birth control pills after that. And I asked, why is she on birth control pills? I never got an answer. That was wrong too. That should never happen. No, your jailer did this to her. This is not a her problem. This is a you and your jail problem. Hush, hush, it says. Beloved said that she remembers what happened to her daughter as if it had happened yesterday. When you live, she goes, when you live that, you don't forget it. It's absolutely embedded in your head and your heart, she says, and I don't have to lie. I lived it every step of the way. After I worked at the feed mill, I visited Sheena from 1 to 3 p.m. every day at the jail. I was very much in her life. She was a kid. She was scared to death and just doped up on anti-anxiety medications. She did not know what was going on, she said. I believe that too. The deputies intimidated me and to no end. I would sit in the office area and they would say, you need to just forget this. They would talk about murder suspects in jail who tried to run and got shot. Or they would talk about someone somewhere who had hung themselves because she was on murder charges. Damn. These were just, veiled threats that if she did not shut up, something would happen to her. They did not come out and say it, but you know where they went. You know that was going on. You know what they were saying. That's what I was afraid of. You don't forget those things. I believe her mother. I absolutely do believe her mother. Blevins worked at that feed mill and helped the Eastburns, Jiggs and his wife, Eileen, because they had lost their son. I felt so bad for the Eastburns. I cleaned the house when Timmy was killed. I did not want them to see that. I completely redid the whole inside of that house for them. She shouldn't have cleaned that. Well, I'm pretty sure it was roped off as evident as a crime scene. Maybe she means after the crime scene was released, she cleaned it. Okay. My husband and I worked for Jiggs and Ellen. Whatever they needed done, we did, for the next 13 years because we felt so bad that they had lost their child. The murder had taken their hand away from them. Okay. We were close with the Eastburns for the next 13 years. All Jiggs would have to do was call us and we would go and do whatever they needed done. Bring them cattle, whatever. We were just 4 parents trying to get through it. And I can see where that could happen. The Zornos deal. The truth about the alleged rape of Eastburn came out last year after Zornos was charged with making sexual advances to a 14-year-old McDonald County girl. Okay, so he was a predator. The whole time, this guy was a predator. All right. The case was investigated by Lori Martinez Howard, a detective with the Sheriff's Department and who had worked with Schlesselman. That word is hard to say, Schlesselman. Howard learned of the alleged rape of Eastburn through Schlesselman, who works as a reserve officer with the department. Howard said Schlesselman was aware of Sheena's plan to appeal her conviction on the murder charge. Says Howard, I had a meeting with her over the phone. She was in the secure room of the prison in Chillicothe. I told her about the allegations I had. I asked her a little bit about the history of her case, and she gave me the story. It matched perfectly with what I had in the case file. She told me that she was being held on murder charges at the time and that nothing had come of the other. Okay, so what happened to her? I told her if she would help us, we would be able to file charges against him for what had happened to her. She agreed to testify against him. Sheena, in her prison interview, said, I felt relieved that somebody finally believed me. The videotape showing the clock also was in the case file, which was still in storage in the evidence locker. According to the probable cause statement, Howard filed last year after the investigation, Terry or Zornos had complete authority over inmate Sheena Eastburn and her environment and welfare at the detention center. Sheena was ordered into the property room for sexual purposes and due to her confined status, lacked the ability, authority, or mental capacity to resist for fearing for her safety and well-being. And I believe that too. Jonathan Pierce, county prosecutor, filed a forcible rape charge against Zornos in 2011 for what allegedly happened with Sheena in the jail. Zornos, in a plea deal, entered a guilty plea involving the 14-year-old girl in exchange for dismissal of the rape charge charge involving Sheena. Zornos was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Thank God the predator was put in prison. I am so glad to hear that. Hmm. Sheena said, I felt more joy that that young girl would not have to get on the stand. It helped me to think I was helping someone else because no one helped me. Justice has been done. I agree. We weren't prepared. Here's the next statement. Gibson, Eastburn's attorney, claims he reached a deal with Pierce to reopen the first-degree murder conviction against Sheena. Gibson's goal was to have the conviction overturned, citing inadequate representation and abandonment of counsel at the time of her trial. Gibson wanted Sheena's conviction reduced to second-degree murder so that she could be sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. There were 2 hearings held on the motion to reopen the case. In the first hearing in early October of the year, this was last year, and this is kind of old information, so I don't really know what year this was, but we're going to just keep reading. Eastburn testified that she had no lengthy meetings with either her public defenders before her trial in 1995. She said she had no understanding of what was happening in court at the time of her trial. And I agree, that's probably true because of her age. Also testifying before Circuit Court Judge Tim Perego in McDonald County Circuit Court was Frank Yankovitz. These are some hard words, some different last names, Yankovitz, who was Eastburn's assistant public defender at the time of the trial. Yankovitz told the court that he became involved in Eastburn's defense about 2 weeks before the trial as an assistant to Victor Head. The district public defender. He said Eastburn's case was his first major felony case. Oh my. She did have an effective counsel, let's be honest. Gibson asked Yankovitz whether he thought Eastburn received a fair trial. Yankovitz says no. When he was asked whether he was in over his head at the time of the trial, Yankovitz said yes. So he admitted he did not give her the best counsel he could. Yankovitz also said that he felt worse about the case than any other case in his 20-year career as a public defender. Tests showed that Sheena was competent to stand trial, but that she was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder because of sexual assaults at age 13. She also was suffering from depression. Her first IQ score was a 91. Her second score was an 80. Mid-mental, I'm not going to say the word, is an IQ of 70-75. Yankovitz said he was never informed about the results of the IQ test. He had known about the test results. He said, had he known about the test results, Yankovitz said he would have shaped a defense strategy around a diminished capacity. Hey there, how you doing, girl? Defending Silence is here. Hey, Loretta, good sweetheart. I hope you're all well. Hey, mods in chat, good to see. Hey, good to see you. I know that Defending Silence over here has information about how to handle these kind of things, and if she ever wants to come on and talk about it, we'll certainly let her do that. You know, because I do not have the background and that kind of. I don't have the information on how to handle that, so I think that would be good to know in case it ever happens. You know, because you never know. So anyway, he goes, in hindsight, we weren't prepared to try this case at all. Then there was a second hearing. In the second hearing, held earlier this year, Blevins said, we told the sheriff and the public defender that she had been raped, and I told them I could not end up raising a baby. We wanted it stopped. Blevins told the court that she and Jiggs Eastburn went ahead, who was the public defender and now an associate circuit judge in Berry County, and alleged that Sheena had been raped in the jail. Head testified that he did not recall that meeting or that anyone had ever told him that Sheena had been raped in that jail before her trial. Gibson challenged Head's representation of Sheena, saying he missed or ignored opportunities to convince the jury that Sheena was guilty of second-degree murder instead of murder in the first degree. If you had known that she had been raped, you could have used that to her advantage, Gibson says. You could have reached a plea deal to keep this ugly secret quiet. Why do you want to keep it a secret? It happened. It needs to be talked about. It does not need to happen in jail. It should never happen in jail. It should never happen anywhere. No, it's ugly, but it should not have been a secret. Those involved need to be charged accordingly. Okay. Boy. Okay. Blevins, okay, so he goes, when he told him about that, the sheriff is going to handle it. That's the answer they got. Continuing his attack of Head's representation of Sheena, Gypsy said the IQ test also could have been used to show that Eastburn was incapable of being the mastermind behind her ex-husband's death, as the prosecution had contended. Deafening Silence says, in the new year, we need to get together, Lil Red. I haven't forgotten about us doing a live stream together and looking forward to it. Maybe the second week in January, we could aim. Yeah, that'd be great. Let's get together and get that figured out. Thank you so much. But there's things I want to talk about that I know you have the information on that I don't. So here we go. So then Gibson asked, okay, let's go back up here. Gibson produced a document that had in Head's possession at the time of the trial that showed Sheena had been psychologically evaluated at age 13 in 1989 at St. John's Regional Medical Center in Joplin. The report said that she was excitable, easily led by others, and given to action that was guilt-free. What? The report said she was excitable, easily led by others, and given to action that was guilt-free. Okay. Gibson also claims that Head could have used that report to show that Sheena was under the substantial domination of Banks, the gunman who had stolen Eastburn's rifle and used it to take his life. The report also said that Sheena had been raped as a child and that she was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Gibson asked Head whether he recalled it. He said he did not. He was lying. He's absolutely lying. Report also said, and then he goes, Gibson also asked Head why he did not call Sheena's psychological evaluator to testify about the rape or that she was suffering from PTSD. Head said he could not recall why he did not call the evaluator to the witness stand because he's a crappy defense attorney. He just wanted to hurry up and get it over with. Okay. Head, who repeatedly said he could not recall the details of the case, said, I cannot say whether that could have helped in her defense. We did the best we could at the trial. I can't say what would have happened if we might have changed that or this. We spent countless hours on the case. I don't believe they did. I believe she did have ineffective counsel. At both hearings, Pierce has disputed a contention by Gibson that he agreed to reopen the case for a new trial. Gibson has accused Pierce of backtracking on the position. Now we're going to talk about the victim's family for a minute. Okay. Surviving members of Tim Eastburn's family, Bobby Eastburn, Leonard Eastburn, and Susie Jones, did not want the case reopened. Of course they did not. Bobby Eastburn, who lives near Rocky Comfort, said, we have been keeping track of it. We don't like what is going on. She worked hard to get in there. She worked hard to get in there, and we don't want her out of prison. My brother won't get a second chance. She's apparently trying to get a second chance. They say she was suffering from PTSD because of her childhood and that she was not very smart. She manipulated the situation to kill Tim. She was the mastermind behind it. She was intelligent enough to set the whole situation up. GypsyRoseBlanchard also was intelligent enough to mastermind the whole thing and manipulate Nick Godejohn. But in the same sense, Nick Godejohn is a sick individual. Please go listen to those videotapes that he put out to her. It's unbelievable. Okay. While the appeal was happening, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a decision that may also impact the case. The court says that laws allowing juveniles under 18 who were convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole just violates the Eighth Amendment's ban on cruel and unusual punishment. Sheena Eastburn was 17 at the time. Pereio, the circuit judge in McDonald County, has asked both attorneys to file with the court's finding of facts on the motion to reopen Sheena's trial and whether her conviction should be overturned in the light of the Supreme Court decision. He is to issue a decision on August 21st. Again, this is some old information because we know she's out and about because she's best friends with old GypsyRoseBlanchard over there. Okay. Who they actually met in Chillicothe. Thinking of freedom is the next part of this. What would she do if she was to be paroled from prison? She said, I would go to school to become a certified personal trainer. I would love to minister to juveniles and help them know about the choices we make and the consequences. I really do want to help people. I know that sounds crazy, but I want to help and let them know there are other choices out there, no matter what your life is like. Gypsy, listen to her. I had a I had a bad life and a childhood, but I still had choices. I did not realize that then. Okay. While in prison, she has taken every class that has been offered to educate and improve herself. I'm an aerobics instructor and a senior dog trainer. I've trained 11 dogs for veterans. I have a dog named Gus now. He's a little piece of freedom for me. I teach about the impact of victims' crimes and child abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence, and homicide. Each chapter tells you what the consequences are for your crime and that we leave a slew of victims in our way. I speak with women who are on probation to explain to them what it's like to be in prison. I try to better myself all the time, she said. If I had remained the same, then I would have learned nothing from the terrible tragedy. So now, though I cannot bring him back, I have changed my life in memory of Tim. You know, everybody says they find God in jail, but he has absolutely changed my life. These doors have opened because God has seen that change. Now, there was an appeal filed. Let me see how long we've been on. Well, I don't know if I can cover all this in one day, in one session here. Hey Les, yes, so okay. So this was on July 16th of 1997, and this was the appeal that was filed. Appellant's brief presents the 3 points, 2 of which the first and the third petition to the appeal. The first point averages that the trial court erred by failing sua sponte to remove for cause 2 members of the veneer, which is like the jurors. Anyway, the third point maintains that the trial court erred in overruling appellant's hearsay objections to testimony of 3 state's witnesses. Okay. Appellant's first claim of error is from the voir dire, which we talked about that. Assistant defender conducted voir dire for appellant. One of his statements to the veneer was, and this is to the jurors that were being interviewed, or potential jurors. This was to the potential jurors. He says, this is what he said to them. Sheena Eastburn is presumed innocent unless and until you all believe that she's been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. She doesn't have to take the stand. She doesn't have to testify. In fact, she doesn't have to put on any evidence at all. And I, as her attorney, or defender as her attorney, we don't have to put on any evidence. Is there anybody who believes that we should put on, oh, that was improper. See, that's completely improper. Several members of the responded. Among them were Scott Woodworth and Alta Royal. The transcript shows this is what they said. This is what they said. The guy says, okay, Mr. Woodworth said, I do. And then the defender says, well, you're Mr. Woodworth. And then he goes, yes. What do you believe, sir? I believe that somebody should have to explain. Okay. Mr. Woodworth, are you expecting the defense to prove their innocence? Are you expecting us to prove that Sheena Eastburn's innocent? And he goes, yeah. Okay, anyone else agree with Mr. Woodworth? Mr. Royal, you're asking to shaking your head. He's shaking his head. Yeah, I agree. You expect us to prove that she's innocent? And he goes, yeah. Okay, well, see, that's the wrong, it was completely wrong. That should have never been said. You were innocent until proven guilty, right? So they're trying to do the opposite right there. Let me look at something else on this appeal right quick. See if there's anything we really want to talk about on this today. Let's see. I'm going to have to talk about this another day because it is 42. I think it's 42 pages or something like. This is a big long appeal. But I will say this. So I'm just going to mark my place right here. We're going to go back and talk about the appeal later. But I will say this. She did file her, she did get released. It was overturned. She did get second-degree murder, I believe is the deal. Let me go back up here. I'm going to read this right quick. Hang on. Oh, boy. Let me read this, and then we'll kind of get going because I've got other things I have to do today. But anyway, I just wanted to come here and talk about this because it's an interesting story, and this is how she met Gypsy. And you know, she's not innocent. She's not innocent. But anyway, then in December 12th, oh come on. Okay, no, I don't want to do that. Go back. I was trying to do an ad blocker. Ugh, I hate that. Okay, let me go back over here and find a different way. Let's see. Let me see if I can find this over here. She was very young. There's pictures. me show you something. Let me get these over here. Y'all hang on a second. I'm going to show y'all these pictures. We'll look at the pictures real quick. So this, let me get rid of this over here. This one right here. I'm gonna find the pictures. I think it's right here. Oop. Here, let me try to get these. Here's the photos. I want to share this screen with you guys. Let me see if it's showing the right screen. It's not. Okay, so we're gonna get rid of this screen, and we'll go ahead and show the other screen. Hang on a second. Stop that, and then we'll add this one so you can see them. Share the screen with. I believe it's those. This one right here. Share. Okay, so as you can see, she was very young. She was very young when this happened, right? So this is her. This is from, these pictures are direct from Murderpedia, okay? Whoops. Let me go back and get the right tab. We can show the other ones. Oops, there's too many tabs open. There you go. That's her too. And again, all of this is from Murderpedia if you just want to go look at it for yourself. I believe that this is her victim, Tim, right here. This was her victim. So anyway, we'll get rid of that. Let me get rid of some of these. I got to get rid of some of these. There's too many tabs open. I'm confusing myself. But yes, I want to find it. Let me get the other part to this story right quick. If I can get this to not do the, let me get it on my phone. There's no ad blockers over here. Okay, hang on just a second, guys. I hope you find this interesting. I mean, the reason why I wanted to talk about it was, well, it's one thing, but it's also something else. Okay, I mean, there's parts of her story that I do feel bad for her about. I do, but she should. Some of these things should have never happened. I'm glad she did file those charges. I'm glad she did get a settlement out of it. Every county jail needs to see this. Needs to be talked about. It should not be a dirty little secret. It needs to be talked about because it happens. It happens all the time in these places. And again, they just cover it up. You know they do because they tried to cover it up in this case. So here we go. Let me look at this. Try to find this right here. It's about her settlement here. Okay. Oh boy. Hope y'all are having a great day today. Okay. Oh. Okay. Let me find it. I know it's over here. I just saw it. Well, here we go. Oh, this is the story right here. It had ad blocker. The McDonald County, Missouri Sheriff's Department has reached a settlement with a woman who claimed she was raped by a jailer when she was in county custody 25 years ago. Okay, so I guess there's no statute of limitations. The lawsuit involves Sheena Eastburn, who was convicted of participating in the 1992 murder of her ex-husband, Tim Eastburn, who when Sheena was 17 years old. Monday, Sheena Eastburn reached an undisclosed settlement in a civil case claiming she was raped by a McDonald County jailer back in late 1993 or early 1994. Eastburn is currently a free woman. She was released from prison last year after serving 25 years for the murder. So she must have gotten resentenced and she served her 25 years, which is a long time, and got out on parole, I guess. So there you go. That's the story on that. Let me see if I can find anything else about that. Hang on a second. There's the Supreme Court, and she was released from jail. Let me look at, now this is, I don't really do Facebook, but I am going to read this little statement from Facebook. After 25 years, this is from the Joplin Globe, and it's on Facebook. After 25 years, Sheena Eastburn has been released from prison, combined since she was 17 for her role in the murder of her ex-husband. A recent ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court altered her sentence to life without parole. She was granted parole early this year and said she's ready to begin a new life. So she was after 25 years, but I don't know if she's on parole or if they called it a serve all. I'm not sure about that. I mean, she's ready to begin. Okay, so they already, she was granted, she is on parole. She was granted parole. So she is on parole. We don't know how long, but anyway, there you go. That's the story on her. Now, I would like to come back and finish. One day we'll come back and just read the whole appeal, because in the appeals, there's a lot of interesting information that you really don't see because we're not at the trials. We're not seeing the evidence. There's a lot of things we don't know about in these trials, but all of it is stated in the appeal. That's why I like to read the appeals. Okay, guys. So anyway, I just want to talk about that for a little bit. I got to get going. I know we haven't been on that long, but I got stuff I have to do. Thank you for coming in. I always appreciate you guys. I always like hearing your comments. If there's any other comments you want to make about this story, go ahead and leave them. We can talk about it again. Put them on our community post or something. I'm always happy to talk to you guys about any information that we've covered before. If you want to revisit it, it's fine. And I will get with it's actually Woman's Warrior or Defending Silence. Well, we'll get with her so she can come and talk to us about what we had planned on talking about before and how to handle abuse. I mean, she's trained in these kind of things, and I am not. Anyway, y'all have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy your day. Be safe out there. Take care of yourself. Go hug your babies. That's so important. Our kids grow up so fast. And I'm telling you, it's hard. When you start doing the empty nester, you learn just how hard it is. I mean, I'm glad I have my little dogs, because if I didn't have my little dogs, I don't know what I would do all day, because you do miss your children. You miss them terribly. Even though they're 45 minutes down the road, you still miss them terribly. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good afternoon. Thank you again for coming in. Next time will be Sprinkled Donut and I. All right, bye, guys.